Good afternoon, everyone. It's my enormous privilege on the sort of tail end of the beautiful 3-day MASIHAMBISANE dialogues to, in a very fitting way, in a way to end our dialogues, our last sort of panel on artist engagement, to deal with two extraordinary South African artists who really have mediated this very interesting negotiation between African spirituality and dance and performance and ritual. The provocation of the dialogues has been this kind of questioning of returning to the drum. And so I'm joined today by two men who I hold in great esteem as artists who I admire and follow, but also I'm very fortunate to call both of them friends. So I'd like to welcome Vincent Mantsoe, it's sort of like 3 in the morning in Canada, I think, but I'm really thank you for waking up and being with us. And I'd like to also welcome Moeketsi Koena, who's in Johannesburg at the moment. It is our absolute delight to have you both. And I'm not going to read a full bio because I think mostly everyone knows who you both are, but just a little recognition of you both. And then going to jump right into the dialogue. So I'm going to start with you, Vincent, and just say that, just a little bio, to say that you were born and raised in Soweto. You were trained in Johannesburg's moving into dance. You live
Yes.
in France at the moment, but are traveling to South Africa almost all the time. We almost see you every year. So I feel like it's we've never lost you. We've just got you in a different kind of way. And I think that these geographical divergences and influences make you an artist who is constantly redefining the ideas of home, of belonging, and that your work has found a resonance all over the world. And I want to speak about that a little bit later.
Mhm.
You grew up very significant to this conversation. You grew up in a family of sangomas, and you often draw on your tradition, your spiritual tradition, as a kind of ritual pivotal in the making and imagining of your work. And again, that is going to be our conversation today. But I think also what's so interesting is the idea of pushing those traditions into a kind of 21st century context. You've
Yes.
won numerous awards all over the world, and have recently, in the last little while, which I know that I've been on the receiving end of it, have begun to really share your technique and your way of passing your legacy on to other people. And recently you've done work with Flatfoot Dance Company, with Lliane Dance Theatre, with ACE in Birmingham, and there's a long tradition of passing on. So welcome, Vincent. And then Moeketsi. So Moeketsi is the co-founder of the newly incorporated Etrotra Arts X Connection. He's also the founder of Inzalo Dance Theatre Company and is the Associate Artistic Director for Madagascar's International Dance Festival. And I hope I'm saying it right, Etrotra. He's a dancer, a teacher, a choreographer. He's worked with various companies and institutions over his quite long career, and is really kind of known for the extraordinary level of fusion that he brings to a kind of African sensibility, but also contemporary dance. He's worked, of course, very significantly with the legendary and late Jackie Samela. He was the artistic director of the Soweto Dance Theatre for a short while, and at that time also completed his dance teacher's training with moving into dance. He studied in Tilburg in the Netherlands, and of course, that connection that South Africa has with parts in Belgium. So Moeketsi, also you are being invited here today, not just for your general excellence, but also you are a practicing Sangoma. And we're going to talk a little bit about that intersection between your spiritual calling and the way you imagine and think about yourself as an artist. So in a way, I'm going to kind of jump right in, and I'm going to start with you, Vincent. Um,
Yes.
so you grew up with a family of Sangomas, and
Yes.
I know that I have heard the story often, but I know that it has been the guiding spiritual principle to honor particularly the maternal ancestors in your family, and that you grew up listening to the drum, and it has mediated and kind of set up your extraordinary entry into the way you think about yourself as a dancer, a performer, and a
Mm.
choreographer. And I wanted you just to talk a little bit about that for us.
Well, thank you very much, Lliane, for inviting me to this beautiful session. And unfortunately, I couldn't, join in on other conversations because of the time difference here. And I would also like to acknowledge Moeketsi Koena, Ukoko, Stulaza, that he's with me today. Yeah, I mean, for me, and I think, it's been very important to try to highlight. Of course, I'm still a student of this um, idea of having to bring in the traditional forms into a stage. But then it's been a very important vehicle for me to drive through because I grew up with it. And as you mentioned in the beginning of your talk, that for me, having to wake up early in the morning every single day as a young child, um, waking up by listening to a drum, that was kind of like a way of a calling. Not necessarily to say that I am a sangoma necessarily, but then something that is been tapped in from a childbirth. And for me, it's been there always. But then, when you grow up in the townships in Soweto or wherever, as a young person, you have your own things to do. You play around, and you don't even realize that, like, there are other things that are much more important. So in terms of having to observe and to be part of this every single day ritualistic processes where I will have to listen to the drum and looking at my grandmother, my auntie, my sisters, my cousins, um my mom, going through all these different emotions of the spirituality. It has been such a blessing. But then I only actually realized it when I first began to be with moving to dance, like 2 years after, actually, when Sylvia, my mentor, same with Moeketsi, when she did her first project, transformation, where it was obviously dealing with the rock art from the Khoisan people. So for me, it was a turning point to say, like, but this is something that I've been going throughout my life. So it was quite very important for me to try to highlight that on my creations, because it's very important, and it was very important for me, and it still is very important to really engage in that aspect of the other world, because as human beings, we tend to forget that there is more than just a simple life, but then there is another life that is very, very hard for the sangomas, for this ritualistic process. And I'm sure Ukoko Swalaza, which is Moeketsi, he will literally, like, explain to you the difficulties that the sangomas they go through, because it's not an easy process to go through. As much as I'm trying to tap into my technique, that the Goba technique itself, is not necessarily an easy process because it requires a lot. So yeah, and for me, the drum, and it plays a very important aspect of my creation, the calling, kind of like something that is giving you the freedom to express the movements in a certain way, and then how to navigate and negotiate with that on stage. That's another matter. So yeah, and for me,
maybe we'll get to that a bit later, because that's
yes,
really very interesting as well.
yes,
On that note, I'm going to jump to Moeketsi. And Moeketsi, I know that in the last while, you, of course, had a calling. I think they call it ukutwasa, if I'm correct. And that journey to becoming a sangoma,
Correct.
is something that you have gone on and managed that. So you're a healer and you've gone through a process. I would love to hear about that calling and that process and what that's meant for you as a human being and as an African, but also as an artist.
Hey, yeah. like to first say thank you very much for this gathering and calling of our ancestors for the opportunity that you're giving to us. Thank you, Ntate Mantsoe, for joining us as well, for being able to finally chat about this kind of like issue that we are dealing with in our everyday life, and that we are seeing it today in our everyday life within the arts and within life itself that we are living in today. Firstly, I would say Ogotwasa, when I started, I mean, it's been something that has been following me for a long time. And that happens to everybody, whereby you find yourself in the space and then you don't know what exactly it is that you are dealing with. One, you begin to misbehave or having a certain behavior that you do not understand yourself at all. And people start telling you that you are not yourself, you are changing, you have changed. So yourself too, you don't know what are those changes until that time comes when we are told that now it is that time now to take the initiation. At first, when you take the initiation, your spiritual leader, which is Kobela in Zulu, will tell you that Ogotwasa, it is not a difficult thing. You came to understand yourself and your ancestors. Whoever that is around you, and then seeking for the same thing. We are seeking for the same thing, but in different ways. Your ancestors communicate with you in a different way from the other, because of they are yours, they are your people, they gave birth to you. Once you are out of Ugotwasa, my Gobela said, that's the difficult part. Now you are a Sangoma, you are a practitioner. There is no one next to you that is going to be guiding you to tell you, do this, do that. You are all by yourself. But what is interesting in this process is that you get to know yourself better. The waking up early in the morning is not a torture, is to be able to connect with yourself. It all the time about being a Twasa or becoming a Sangoma. It's all about humbling yourself and understanding oneself. How now you borrow from being a Sangoma and then put it into the art is another story, because of at the same time, we are still have to be careful. And then you don't only do it, you don't only take things and then put them on stage. You ask for the permission from your ancestor. You ask for them to say, I am doing this kind of work. Can you please guide me in terms of how and what can I utilize? They will guide you if ever you listen. It's all about listening at the same time. If ever you don't do that, you're going to be having a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But arts and spirituality is a beautiful space to be in. I'm enjoying myself today. I understand myself better, even though I'm still struggling, even though I'm still learning, because of you never stop learning. In the arts, you never stop learning. You keep on searching and searching and searching until you find something. In spirituality also, you keep on learning. You keep on listening. They keep on coming in different ways. So it is of important to understand that when you are a Twasa, it's not about struggling. It's about enhancing yourself. It's about making yourself strong. It's about understanding your tradition, your culture, and where you're coming from, your family tree, and everybody that lives around you. To be able for you to become a sponge, to meet everybody in the street or them coming to your surgery and talking to you. It is such a greatest thing that one as a Sangoma can have in their own life. It is a difficult one because of you don't only walk in the street. You walk in the street and then you've got to talk to thousands of people at one go. When you're walking on the street, sometimes you lock yourself in the house and you say, I do not want to go outside in the street, because of your energy does tell you. We are people that are, I won't say controlled, but we are We listen to the energy that we are given to, because of every day there's a different energy. Every second there's a different energy. I could be sitting down here and then I could have a different energy that I could start talking certain things. And then I could be in the street, certain energy can come to me. And so you're living in the world whereby it is not certain. There's always uncertainty. You have to settle yourself and focus and then be at your best. Because of it, all the time, there's something new happening. Each and every second, there's something new happening. You are not in control.
I mean, I love the idea. I think in a way, in many spiritual traditions, there is this concept, if I think of true spiritual traditions, of being humble to powers that are higher than oneself. I mean, I also wanted to say, as a white South African, it's thanks to Vincent and to you also, Moeketsi, more recently. But certainly watching Vincent's dance work and speaking to him, that I began to learn about a spirituality that, of course, I didn't grow up with and that I didn't understand. And I'm interested, that it was through performance that I got to understand a little bit of a spiritual practice and a way of being in the world that was not something that I had grown up with or understood. But so I think in a way, the question that I'm asking to both of you, and I'll ask Vincent first and then come back to Moeketsi, is that what's interesting for me is that you're not performing sacred rituals on stage, that you are, whatever powers and ancestral presences are being harnessed, you are performing rituals, that there is a ritual transcendence in the work, but you are, both of you, making art. You are choreographers, you're dancers, you are making artwork. And I think that for me, it's quite an interesting thing to unpack or maybe problematize, but the idea that you are not simply performing a ritual on stage, because those are in fact quite sacred rituals, but that there is a harnessing of spirituality, of a sense of self, as you are talking about it, Moeketsi, that helps inform the way you make art. And I'm interested by that. And Vincent, I don't know if you want to comment, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think firstly, I think what to try to highlight as well is that the fact that something that Moeketsi, because I always call him Ukoko, is a Kokushlaz, and that the importance of having to ask permission to the ancestors is crucial. Because yes, some of the things that we are presenting on stage, they are quite sacred, but then yet at the same time having to go through all these different asking the permission, it allows the ability to somehow manage the senses of how to work with the different energies on stage. So for me, of course, it's been such a long time that I've been doing that, and having to know and understand, and truly humbling myself on stage is a vehicle for that, because you cannot have the ego of having to say, like, you don't know. You don't know exactly, what's going to happen and what's happening at that moment. Whereas, of course, you have to negotiate yourself through through the ancestors, and then having to relay the information of that at that particular moment. So, and again, yes, it's very fragile, and how to ask those permissions. I mean, I don't know how many permissions I had to go through. So many of them, going through like the rituals and having to slaughter some chickens. I don't know, so many. Because it's that ability, and something that Ukoko has highlighted earlier on as well, like to humble yourself in such a way that you are a child. And then you have been given this opportunity to relay the messages. And those messages, of course, some things we cannot go too far because you are on stage and you are doing something that is beyond you. And at the same time, these are different energies then when they come. Some they overwhelming you, as Ukoko mentioned earlier on, that you have these different senses that they come to you in waves. So you have to know how to negotiate them, to talk to them, and then of course having the possibility of being able to connect with the audience as well, because you are not only just doing something that is sacred, but then you are also dealing with the audience in front of you, people who may not necessarily know exactly what's happening. So it's all about like really negotiating and really navigating yourself through, the energies of your ancestors, talking in different ways, and of course, you do feel. I mean, I understand very well. I know very well what Okoko is saying, that when he walks on in street, you have a lot of energies. I mean, a lot, and then depending, who you meet, some day, those energies are bad, some they're good. So you have to know, of course, El Sangoma, and how to really be kind, be very kind with those people, because it's quite very a tangible thing, to deal with, and really having to work on stage is a blessing. It's truly a blessing. And for me, when Sylvia she gave me, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know, because with Moeketsi, it's been following him for many, many years without realizing. When Sylvia gave me the opportunity to tap into that even more, it was the something that I was scared about. I was fully very scared to tap into it. So and the only way that I could do it and try to do it is to ask for permission to go back home, to return home and say, this is what's happening, and I don't know how to deal with this. So and so the idea of, again, returning home and with the drum, the two to coming together into the body, is something magnificent.
Yeah. One of the things that's come up quite a lot through the last few days is the idea that the body is a drum. And that, the first drum is the heartbeat. But also, I love the image that has been brought up about the fact that the drum has an animal skin, and the animal skin, it's a bit like our skin. It's a porous, things flow in and out. And I think that, so I think also the transfer of being from ancestral realm to physical realm, and on the stage is quite a profoundly beautiful notion. So, Moeketsi, I want to maybe ask you a similar question to what I've just asked Vincent. The idea of, with that porous sense of self, and the humbling, and the idea that you walk and dance not just with yourself, but with a whole host of histories and memories and people. What is it like to translate that or transfer that into a kind of performance space? Because you're not doing your Sangoma rituals on stage, but you are bringing that energy with you. So, just to understand, I'd love to hear from you.
Just to track it back a little bit, long time ago. I think that being a Sangoma and then also being an artist, a dancer, it's a calling. It's not something that just come to you just like that. Not everybody can just do like that, be like that. I would say, as a Sotho speaking, my family comes from Lesotho. And then when they moved to South Africa, they moved as a village, all of them, into one street. And then they were all neighbors. They created a village in the township, whereby you'll have like the royal, you'll have the the disciplinary, you'll have the shebeen. At home, it was a disciplinary. And then next to it, it was a shebeen, the Sotho shebeen, whereby they were wearing traditional, the blanket and the stick and the hat, and there will be dancing for the whole day and night. So whenever you look for me, that's where you will find me, whereby there's a song and dance. Every day you look for me, that's where you'll find me. And then at that time, I was still very little. That's where at all the time you'll find me. So it starts from there, that dance, it's been instilled in me from a very, very, very young age. The drum, it has been with me from a very, very young age. But as Vincent said, as we grow up, we tend to forget because of other influences that are around us. And then later on, you meet people such as Jackie Simela, Sylvia Tlasa, that reminds you to say, hello, who are you? That's the first thing that Jackie asked us, what is your name? And you give a foreign name and Jackie says, go back home and find out who are you? What is your name? So just asking that, it gives you the basics of you yourself. Who are you? What is your name? What does you know? We've got what we call a family tree, not in a Western way, but in an African way, whereby we'll call our ancestors with their names and everybody, the bloodline of Koena or Tsiu or Mantsoe. These are the people that we go back to, that are living with us throughout the time, that are living with us. That's why at all the time we will see visions and then we'll go according to them. But being on stage and then doing this kind of work, it's not an easy one. Maybe Ntate Mantsoe can tell you that before he performs, he takes hours of meditation before he jumps on stage. We perform before we jump on stage. By the time we jump on stage, we are what we want us to see. The thing that we said we're going to talk about will become that. Because of we take a process. You psych yourself to get into that character. Just like any actor that will go into a character. They psych themselves to go into character. And then with us as well, after psyching yourself into the character, you jump on stage, you do your performance. To come out as well out of the character, you need again another 1 hour to 2 hours to come down, to come back to reality. So this is always a process. When you know that, hey, I'm performing in 3 days, hey, it begins now to work on you at all the time. It begins to work on you. And then at all the time, the performance, now you become this performance that you're supposed to go and present. You become it before you jump, before you do it. That's for me, that's the beauty of where I am. It's so beautiful. Because of before
I'm hearing you sound, I'm also listening to Vincent laughing because of that laugh of recognition. And I know because I've been, I know Vincent always when he comes to Jomba, he always says, just give me half an hour after the show and then I'll come up. So I know that about you both. But I'm interested, I remember once Lliane came to Jomba and she presented a piece called Fagala, which means genocide. And the work was about, you might know the work, it's one of her kind of key works. It was about the Rwandan genocide. And she had a cast of all male dancers who portrayed the kind of women in the genocide. And she asked everybody in the theatre to leave. She said, I just want the dancers and myself to be in the theatre. So she asked the stage hands and everyone, and we did. We respected her request because, it's Lliane. But we heard this blood-curdling kind of cries and screams coming from the theatre. So, I'm also, you worry that everyone's okay and, does someone need water, It's that care thing. But I know in talking to her afterwards, she said to me, we invoke the genocide, which was really quite a hard thing for me because she said we're invoking the spirit of the genocide in order to get through the work. And I also know, so I suppose I'm making a comment, but I'm also the question to both of you is, there are lots of young artists, and I know because I also work in a student environment where students are dabbling and playing, and of course it's not my tradition, and so my counsel is difficult. I can't give counsel in a tradition that's not my own. But what I hear from both of you is an extraordinary level of process, respect, and guidance that is required for this kind of thing. Are there dangers to this work, do you think?
Yeah,
I don't know,
do you mean
Vincent.
like when do you mean when you have to go on stage and doing this kind of a
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
and also and for people not who are not understanding, like the two of you, the depth of the work that you're doing, to not dabble. I mean, I'm asking, to understand.
yeah, I mean, look, I think that there's a certain danger in a way that, of course, you cannot do this kind of a work if you don't have that calling, because yes, there is a certain a degree of where people they think they have it, and that's where you get all this kind of like a fake representation of the ancestors on stage, and that's the danger of it, because you are not only just dealing only about the mere just like interpretation of just a move, but then you are dealing with something that is very tangible and something that is very unique and very sacred. So and yet again, it's all about the process of having to ask the permission. If you don't ask that permission, yes, then you get into a lot of problems. And you have all these different negative energies that are happening at once, where you may end up not even having to come back, because you didn't go through that process, because it's very, very important to go through. And for me, and I'm sure with Ugogo, not I'm sure, but I know that before we go on stage, you have to. I take, before I leave the hotel, wherever I am, if I'm going to perform, I take that 2 hours, 2 hours or 3 hours, preparing myself mentally, physically, and spiritually, because, the, 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 the spiritual part of it is already in the move. It's preparing the journey. And then the moment when you step on the stage, you're already in this holistic stage, or proscenium, basically, where so many things are happening, and the appreciation of that, you just have to let go of whatever it is. But then, as I say, and Gogo has said it as well, it's a process, and it's a process where it takes a lot of into the body, and to get out of it as well, it takes quite a lot, because to stop it just like that is not possible, because you can see, like, if you just stop it like that, then no, it's like, no, you are not, you are not in there, so it's really something that yes, it's got its dangers, and it's really something that one can really try to ask those permission, and process it in a proper way. Without a proper way, then nothing it will work.
I don't know if you want to add anything, Moeketsi.
I do agree with Vincent and Mantsoe at the same time. Lliane, let's look at it like this. First, I'll start with you and say, it is your culture as well. Spirituality is everybody's culture. You could be a Sangoma as well. You could be called as well. Doesn't matter what color you are, or what nationality, what part of the world you come from. If ever you are called, you are called. Whether you're called in South Africa or in Europe, you will be called. That's one. Two is that now recently, in the life of spirituality, especially life of becoming a Sangoma, there is lots of things that are happening. some of them are confusing. I still do not know. I still do not understand them. And then also, I'm not going to question them because I'm not the person that has to question them. But it worries when we start canceling each other through social media, through television, through radio. How do you feel as a human being when you are cancelled and all your stories, they are going publicly? Which ancestor are you connecting with when you call me and then I've got to cancel you over a line? This thing, it is also happening as well on stage. We ask from the ancestor, we borrow elements of ritualistic processes. We don't use rituals, we borrow. We try to find a way in how we can present what we know or what we do not know on stage, and then it doesn't offend anyone. It's all about how, if ever a Sangoma is going to come in and watch my work, and then this work is all about Sangomas, how do I make that person to understand that I've borrowed? It's not that far away, but it is closer to you. But I'm using it in my own way. When do we say we are creative? Somebody just said, when we had a conversation, just said and asked a question, isn't it prostitution when we take our rituals as they are and put them on stage? When you take a cow or a sheep or a chicken and slaughter it on stage, can't you find any other thing to utilize, to symbolize that? Yes, we can find certain things, but certain things, you've got to understand them. Why are you using them? If ever I said I'm going to light a candle, I cannot replace a candle. If ever I said I'm going to light mpepo, I'm going to light mpepo. I'm not going to replace it. But there is other ways that you can replace those things. But what is important for me is being able to tell the very same story in the same way, but not disrespecting the ritual itself.
Yes, exactly.
When people are beginning now to use rituals and start disrespecting rituals and then taking it into something else that we do not know and insulting the ritual, then that's when I start to become worried about spirituality and arts. And then two, if ever you do not know about something, get guidance. Get someone in, or go to that person, get guidance. Let someone coach you in terms of like what you are doing. That's what is called research. Go and research properly. Understand the subject properly. Understand that thing properly that you are dealing with.
Yes.
Now recently, I've got a piece called Ingoma. Ingoma is absolutely about Ugutwasa. But when you see it, it is not the same way that I just borrowed the element that I know that I've got to pray. I know that I've got to light candle. I know that I've got to light mpepo. I know that water is needed. I know that certain things. I know that I've got to put something on my body, but I'm not discriminating it. I'm not coming and putting it. And at the same time, the artists too, themselves, the dancers themselves, you've got to know them. You've got to know them because it's dangerous if ever you don't know or you don't understand your dancers and then dealing with a ritualistic performance.
Yeah. I was interested earlier this week, Dada, sorry, Moeketsi, I'm interrupting you.
To the end of the performance.
We're losing you a little bit.
We're losing Moeketsi.
While we're waiting for him to come back, I'm just going to make a comment. David April spoke to Dada Masilo earlier this in the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE dialogues, and Dada was also saying a very different tradition to the ones that you both work in, but she also spoke really articulately and really beautifully about the fact that for her there's a line, but sometimes in the performances she watches her dancers going. And that idea of knowing what the line is between that performance space and between, I mean, you mentioned disappearing and potentially not coming back, which, you know, is kind of very difficult and very hard. And I'm wondering, you know, yourselves when you are performing and those kind of processes start to emerge in the body, how do you know what the line is? How do you know when you need, or do your ancestors just look after you and go, Moeketsi, now is enough? You know, I don't know.
Last time when I saw Vincent solo, the recent solo, and I almost jumped on stage. I was ready to jump on stage, but lucky enough, his family was there as well. Now my friend is gone. I have to be ready. If ever something happened, I've got to be ready to jump on stage very quickly. You know, Lliane, is quite difficult, you know, because of sometimes you don't see you are all in the journey, especially when you are doing a group piece. You are all in the journey. You can only realize at the end. Lucky enough, what's called at PJ, one of my dancers, two of my dancers, they always get into trance after performance. Lucky enough, it doesn't happen during the performance. Immediately, when they are finished, I've got to deal with them.
Wow.
And then this time, it was them at PJ, it was them, and then the audience as well, part of the audience. So I have to cancel this side, deal with them this side, and then after that, run and deal with the others. So there is sometimes a danger for your performance and for the audience. That's why what's called something that came into my mind is that whenever we are programmed, we need to let the audience and allow them to choose for themselves whether they want to come into a ritualistic performance,
okay,
or not, because of some of them they just get taken, and some of them they
well, I mean, that's a very interesting curatorial thing that I've never thought about, to actually say to audiences there are ritual aspects in the work. That's a beautiful thought. Vincent, is there a line for you when you're in that state? How do you? Moeketsi, you're breaking up a little bit. While you're Moeketsi, you're breaking up a little bit. So while we find you back, I'm going to ask.
Can you hear me now?
I'm going to hand it to Vincent and just ask him for himself as well. What are those lines of coming back and not coming back, or is it not an issue? You know.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, there is a line of having to come back, because when you are truly in it, you have all these different senses that, you know, of course, in terms of the contemporary world, you kind of like, you know, you dividing yourself in two. One part of your senses or your spiritual world is in a performance space, and then the other side is more is into the spiritual realm. So in a sense, you know, you find that for me, you know, I control my spiritual performances, in a sense where I have to now know exactly when and how to get out of it. But then the problem now, it becomes, even when I'm finished, when the performance is finished, there's always something pulling me back into the performance. So that is still the continuation. So it takes a bit of a time, you know, for me to realize that, you know, the performance is finished.
Wow.
You know, and that, you know, is the power, and it's also very beautiful, and at the same time it's very hard, because, you know, having to say that, you know, the performance is finished when it's supposed to be finished. Yes, it's supposed to be, but then, you know, the other side of the world, you know, is still with you, and it doesn't just finish just like that. It's a long process, and so something that Ukoko mentioned earlier on, that, you know, the the consultation, if you don't know, you consult as a performer. I'm still very fortunate that my mom she's still around. My auntie, my cousins are still around. My sisters, they're still around. Where I sometimes struggle with, like, the concept of the work. I said, this is, I have the concept, but then I don't understand things. Like one of my recent work, Izilo, the costume was created by my sister, who is a Sangoma herself. Because she understood the whole concept of it. So, and so every time when I do this kind of work, I have to consult. I have to. So it's really a moment of where, to know where the line is of going further and or retreating. So it's really something very, very, very special and very delicate at the same time.
Yeah. And I mean, I hear from both of you just a profound sense of respect and honor, that that is not playing in a way, which is really beautiful to hear. And I remember discussing this with Moeketsi, last year, but I remember Moeketsi saying his ancestors love it when he performs. He says they wake him up sort of, like hours before, and he's awake,
Yeah.
So I kind of love that story.
Yes.
So
Yes,
Moeketsi, I
yes,
mean, it's just, yeah.
They do enjoy. The more the drum, the more the dancing, the more the guitaring, the more the energy goes up. The more they pick me up, the more they carry me like the baby, and the more I enjoy myself in life.
Togoza.
And Moeketsi, this is a question to you, maybe a little bit off tangent, but I'm very interested, and I know that Vincent calls you Gogo, and that your primary ancestral presence is female. It's a grandmother. And I'm,
Yes.
as someone who doesn't know the tradition, I'm delighted at the idea of the gender crossings. I'm delighted at the idea that there's a way in which we can inhabit both bodies in a way. And I don't know, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that.
I mean, the spirits that guides me is two of them and many others, but the main are two. It's the mother of my father and the mother of my mother. Both of them. They told me that I was their favorite, and both of them, the other one was dealing with bones and the other one was dealing with water. So I've got both of them with me. That's why I don't go to water. I'm so scared to go to water. That's one thing that's why I don't go to it, because I'm off.
Whenever Moeketsi comes to Durban, he won't go to the sea. I know.
No, I go to the sea, but I'm very careful. I just touch the water a little bit and run away.
Yes. It's the same with my mom. Yeah. She's the same. She's both the water and so she doesn't go to the sea. I mean, she goes, but just dipping her toes.
Yeah.
Because of there's a say that goes with it. If ever you are off bones and water, is that you have not yet finished. You finish with the bones, maybe, but you still own the water ancestor. And at any time, whenever you go to the water, this ancestor from the water can decide to just take you. And you go underneath. Where you go, we don't know. But you go and live underneath the water. Then you'll come out at some time. Your family has to come and get you. But they don't even tell the family. At that particular time, you could be alone and you could be taken. No one will know. And then they'll only come to a very young child in the house, innocent child, and tell that child that Moeketsi is coming back. And the child will tell the adults in the house that prepare. Moeketsi is coming back now. It's it is real to be living in a real and the unreal. It is sometimes
But
difficult
it's
because of
just it's
sometimes
such a I mean, in a way, as dance scholars and as dance makers and as people who we love the body. The body is this vehicle, and we spend a lot of time rethinking the body. And I mean, in a way, none of it's new, because all of this ancient tradition about bodies that exist in and out of time, bodies that exist in real realms and spiritual realms. It's sort of like this extraordinary, I don't know, a porous notion of being, which is, I don't, there's a lot of discussions around, there have been over the colloquium about moving away from the binary ways of thinking of, kind of right and wrong and, colonial,
Yeah.
decolonial, black and white, male, female, whatever it is, to ideas of more sort of full whole. I'm thinking of that cannibal whole body, but the idea of the whole body, and I feel like
Yeah.
both of you've made me think about the whole body as not just a kind of physical body, but a
No, it's
body
not
that
just
exists.
no. Yeah. No, I mean it's not only just about the peripheral body, it's about also the body that is that we don't know. Your other self, who are being multiplied by other your ancestors, basically. And so it's such a very unique way of really trying to still retain those ancestors, because we are here because of them. Without them, we are just vessels just moving around. So and to be able to rejoice them. I mean, for myself and for Okoko, I think we are able to tap into that, to really, and that's when they get even more happier. As Okoko mentioned, they get even more happier when they hear those songs, they hear those stamping on the ground. I stamp a lot on stage. I stamp a lot, to hear the drum, even though it may be like a drum coming from a speaker, but it's still a drum. To hear that, it evokes all those emotions and the history, the tradition from before us. I mean, before me, there was somebody else. So we try to evoke them as much as possible, to celebrate them as much as possible, and for me, it's always been a desire to reconnect with Moeketsi. And I only reconnected with Ukoko a couple of years ago. And because I know that, our first meeting, truly it was in Moving to Dance in 1990, our first meeting in 1990 with Moving to Dance, when we did auditions. And then our second meeting, it was the only two of us on stage, with Sylvia Glasser's Zimbili. So, and again, at that particular time, we didn't really, we were still very young. We didn't know, that, we actually we are carrying something more than just us, because we are still young, we are still learning other things. So yeah, and I think, for me, it's something really unique in that way, again.
I hope very much we get to see both of you together on stage, again.
I mean, we've been
That
talking.
would be a wish.
We are talking with Gogo, and we are trying to see if we can talk with Sylvia, if we can utilize Zimbili again to reconnect. But at the moment we are only talking between myself and Gogo Strolaza, for the possibility of next year, to see what we can do together, and who knows? Only the ancestor knows that they can open those channels for us, and to really do something together.
I look forward to it. I'm so sorry to say that I've just looked at the time and realized that our hour is almost up. I can't believe it. I feel like we've only just started to talk to each other.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is a deeply magnificent conversation, and I feel very privileged to have you both in the room, not just as artists whose work I admire, but as also spiritual guides, but also as friends, and people whose work that I've been privileged to witness and participate in. And I was going to ask you what you were, kind of my last question to you was to say, what are you working on now? But I'm going to kind of leave it at that. Maybe we're going to see this beautiful collaboration in the future. And I'm asking Gogo to kind of, help us find that. But I want to say on behalf of Jomba and the whole colloquium to say thank you. Both of you are guides and you are really lights to us all, and to thank you for unpacking really difficult spiritual discussions, but I think really important discussions to have as South Africans, as Africans, and globally. I mean, I loved what you said, Moeketsi. So I see that David April, the beautiful David April, has put his camera on, and I'm wondering, David, if you have a last comment, because I know you're part of this family, really,
Tatanelo.
Tati.
Can you hear me?
Tatanelo.
Yeah.
Yes,
Am I audible?
You are
You
so
are
audible.
audible,
you
David.
are indeed.
You know what? Listening to both Vincent and Moeketsi, it was fascinating because it was almost like one person speaking. Because everything that they were saying, it was almost like a conversation of what is beyond. And that connection, I cannot even put it into words, because we're talking about difficult stuff, things that we don't understand in this physical world. And then what they have done, obviously, as artists, as practitioners, they've shared it with the world, put it on stage. And I like the fact that both of them emphasize the fact that do it with appreciation. Once you appropriate, do the necessary research. That is not just going to be for people out there to look into something strange and then they don't understand. So that emphasis throughout, as I was listening, is so important, especially for the younger generation, because now it's being done for sensationalism, it's been done for marketing purposes, it's been done for all the wrong reasons. And then meanwhile, what they're both saying is, yes, let's go back to that. Let's go back to the roots, but then do it with respect. And then once you do it there, and then you are on stage, and then you're doing it with authority, absolutely amazing. And then also I just wanted to, because I see Sylvia is here, also just to acknowledge her presence, because the three of us, Vincent, Moeketsi, David, we were the guinea pigs, by the way, of the community dance teachers training course. But then having said that, it was so amazing because 30 years later, we are still connecting. 30 years later, we're still talking about the very same things that we didn't understand as young people. So, like, this world, the strange world, through Sylvia, because it was through her that we all met. And then for me, it's just amazing that we're able to have this conversation. And then, yes, that piece is going to happen, Vincent and Moeketsi. It will be Zimbili reimagined
2.0.
or Zimbili
2.0.
whatever. But then exactly, it's going to happen. So thank you very much, Sylvia, for creating that opportunity for the three of us to be here and then share with the world. So I thank you, and then I honor you.
Really,
Thank you, Sylvia.
I have to talk.
Thank you.
I'm crying here. I mean, I'm 83, and I never dreamt in 1990 that I would still be here, and the three of you. I'm really just so moved. And I have to tell you this. Today is my 60th wedding anniversary. And I told my family we couldn't have the celebration tonight because Vincent and Moeketsi are going to be part of the MASIHAMBISANE, and I have to be there. So that's how much you all mean to me, the three of you.
Thank you,
Sylvia.
thank you.
Thank you very
Honored
much,
so
Sylvia.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so emotional right now. You guys all
Me
make me so
too.
emotional.
Me too.
So I'm so sorry
Yeah.
to be the person who has to end it off, but I wanted to say there are many mothers of dance on the African continent, and to say Sylvia is one. So we acknowledge you, Sylvia, as one of
Yes.
our great mothers on the continent for all you've done for us. And I acknowledge these three amazing men in the room who've taught me so much about being African, about being South African, about dance, and about really, can I just say, an incredible sense of family and community. So I'd like to end there and say thank you, thank you, thank you for being with us. And just to remind everybody that we've got a 5-minute break, and then we're going to do the final wrap-up session of the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE dialogues. Thank you, everybody.
Togos.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Togos.